Let's jump into the fact that we are going to have a week off in many schools across the tri-state coming up for winter break. And I know that's important, at least in New York, where Governor Hochul was talking about the fact that she's going to reevaluate the mask mandate of kids going to school with masks on after this break because, they'll be gone from school a little bit. And then that she's trying to get those tests out, handing out test kits. And that's the same for different states in our area. What do you think this break will do to this mask conversation heading back to school?
Well, I think there's a great deal of data that can come out of it. We can look back. There have been several school breaks since we've returned to a somewhat more normal school period during the pandemic. And if history repeats itself, we will see a spike in cases because people are more lax while they're on vacation, when they're out and about with their friends. I do think that Omicron burned through a great deal of the population, that plus the vaccination effort in most age groups. I'm hopeful that this will mean that the peak of this next surge won't be terribly high, and hopefully it's very short-lived. But that will provide, I think, the governor and her advisors the type of data they would need whether or not it's in fact time to take the masks off. I think while vaccination rates in school-age children remain low, my personal opinion is that masks should stay on. However, in those school districts, in those schools, perhaps even in those classrooms where the vaccination rate is sufficiently high to protect each other, it may be time to take those masks off, so long as we follow the data closely.
But the fact that, kids are going home, it's still winter, they are going to be in inside areas, maybe with different kids there used to be at school. Maybe some kids are going to the Caribbean or going on that much needed vacation that they've been putting off. So as you said, yes, it's most likely that the cases may rise once we go back to school. So how is that going to play? Is that just going to go, for governors deciding like, all right, we can't take the masks off because now we're seeing cases go up?
Well, I suspect that the governor won't pull the masks mandate the moment that the school break is over. I'm hopeful that they'll look and say we need to see the number of new cases that come from vacation, which we will see a spike. And then I think we look at the next several weeks. We've had this discussion at home with our school-age children. When can we take the masks off at school? And at least in our household, we're going to continue to mask the children at school until we see that the numbers remain low. We've been very fortunate in our school district where 3 weeks ago there were 200 cases a day, 250 cases a day. Now we're 1, maybe 2 cases a day. So I think when we return to that threshold, if I were an advisor to the governor, I think once we've had that peak, we've returned down to a very low number of new cases in highly vaccinated populations, that might be the right time to consider this.
What do we say for obviously the masks being allowed not to be put on in businesses and things like the gym and places you go, stores? So and then the kids go to school and they have their masks on. For parents who are like, this doesn't make sense. What would be your advice? Just keep the masks on? What would be your advice to them?
Well, let's keep in mind we're talking about two distinct populations, right? Now, yes, kids walk into school, to stores, kids go to karate class and so forth. But I think we have to look at the population that's under-vaccinated, right? So certainly in places like daycare for kids under the age of 5 who are not yet eligible for vaccination, and perhaps even in that school age group of sort of 5 to 12-year-olds, that population is still vulnerable. I mean, we saw 50% of the kids who walked into my emergency department in Northwell 3 weeks ago, 50% were COVID positive. We do not want to return to those days. Now, I think the counter argument here is at some point we need to try and see what happens when masks come off. I do think that in public spaces where there's lots of people, masks may need to stick around longer. And certainly I think there might be an option. I think as a parent, we need to be respectful of people's choices.